Alex, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. It's
Yeah,
great
no
to
worries.
it is great to chat with you about this series, The Water Brothers. I mean, the series itself is great. I'm glad that it's back for season five. I think is this the fifth season now?
Yeah, yeah, season five.
That's amazing. So how did how did it season one come about? How did this begin?
Well, the journey really began soon after my brother Tyler and I graduated from university. We started working for the production company that we still work for today, SK Films. We primarily do IMAX films, like educational, science-based IMAX films that play at science centers and museums around the world. So lots of stories on wildlife and nature and science, but we really wanted to do documentaries on our own. You know, we were working on some of these big budget, these IMAX films, but there's only so many stories we could tell in a single year. You know, each one of those films takes years and years to put out, and we wanted to do a series where we'd be able to tell a lot more stories that we were passionate about. And I mean, it still takes a lot of time to put it together, but at least to do some sort of series or a series of documentaries that would allow us to cover a lot more topics than we would otherwise be able to do. And so it all just kind of came about, also just being two young filmmakers and wanting to travel the world and film wildlife. But, we didn't want to just film wildlife and show pretty pictures. We really wanted to talk about solutions. And that's also where the journey of the Water Brothers started too, was a show about solutions, a show about the biggest environmental issues that we face in the world today, told through water. We just found that all the different stories we wanted to talk about, all the different documentary ideas we had, it always came back to water, always came back to either freshwater or oceans or both, how freshwater and oceans are interconnected as well. So yeah, that's essentially it. Yeah, it's that desire to tell environmental stories, talk about solutions, and kind of take these complex issues and then make them more accessible and engaging for audiences, especially younger audiences as well.
It makes sense for you to say you're talking about working with IMAX stuff because some of these episodes really do sort of feel cinematic. But the shots are so broad that I get the sense of pulling back and seeing the amazing things of that nature has to offer. It really works well. It's beautifully shot too. Um,
Yeah, thanks so much. That's definitely more Tyler. You know, I do a little bit of filming, but all the beautiful shots you see, that's Tyler. He's a really talented cinematographer and excellent drone pilot. I think something that's really elevated this fifth season, because the fourth season came out all the way back in 2017. We weren't sure we were going to do another season ever. Um, but we had this opportunity through the pandemic where we were stuck at home and we were talking to TVO. They wanted to renew all the previous four seasons. We're like, hey, if people are still watching, you want to renew, well, maybe we do a fifth season. Maybe we do it all shot in Ontario or all shot in Canada, because in past seasons we had traveled all around the world. We'd tell one or two kind of local stories, like North America based stories, and then four or five all around the world. So we were like, okay, we can't travel as much as we used to. Why don't we do all local stories? And yeah, and then so also obviously the advancement in drone technology just in those 5 years or so since the last season. We just had better tools available to us, and yeah, like I said, Tyler's an amazing drone pilot. So I think that's kind of elevated um like some of the shots that we have compared to past seasons, even when we still had drones, but they're better drones now.
yeah, and that's so interesting. I never even would have even thought of that the focus in Ontario stems out of the pandemic because that makes a lot of sense. And I that was one of the things I thought was so fascinating about these episodes is it really highlights Ontario as this incredible ecosystem that we take for granted, those of us that live here. But what was most surprising to you as you delved into just what's going on within the province?
Well, Ontario is very big. I think we all kind of know that in a sense, but when you are filming, six episodes that are all in Ontario, you get to cover a lot of the province. And doing all those long drives reminds you like, okay, Ontario's like bigger than most countries on earth. And, we have more water than most countries do, just Ontario alone. So there's a lot of really fascinating stories that we could have told or didn't even have time to tell in a season. There's definitely more we could have done. So just another thing that really surprised us, I would say, is just getting to spend time up on Hudson Bay, Hudson and James Bay. I think a lot of people in Ontario forget that we have a huge ocean coastline. We have 1,300 kilometers of ocean coastline in this province, and it's so far away from where almost all of us live. We don't always think of that. So we got to, in our episode, The Breathing Lands, which was the season premiere, uh, we that's one of the places we take you is to the coast of Hudson Bay. Polar bears, caribou, beluga whales, and I hope get to show the people of Ontario this incredible part of our province that we often forget about. Even we don't even think about it, and we spend a lot of time thinking about water and the ocean. And yeah, that was a real treat, a real surprise for us was getting to spend a lot of time there and see how incredible it is firsthand.
It really is amazing to see, in each of the 6 episodes, just this different look, this difference, water that is 2 billion years old. You know, you've got the peatlands in the film or in the opening, in Breathing Lands, and talking about save our soils and all these. It really is a remarkably diverse ecosystem that, like, frankly, for those of us that live on the southern part of it, we take for granted or don't even know about. Like you said, it's pretty wild. What?
Yeah, yeah. I would just say, yeah, we did make an effort to choose really distinct subject matters, with agriculture and save our soils, wetlands in southern Ontario and paving over paradise, and then the story of the breathing lands, the peatlands in northern Ontario. Um, yeah, that's one of the goals of the whole show. One of the missions of the whole show is to show people how interconnected all these different issues are and how they impact us in our daily lives and the solutions, that we can both do in our own daily lives, but also we be encouraging our governments and larger companies to do, who oftentimes have more power to create change when it comes to water. So yeah.
Absolutely. I was wondering, what, in your perspective, though, is you talk about your connectedness that we have to our environments. Is there something in particular that you wish that audience would really understand about our relationship to the natural world and water and soil?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things we could talk about there, but um I would say, I mean, when it comes to like solutions and things you can do, I would say uh, food purchasing decisions can and diet can have like a huge impact on water and the environment. So whether it's we've done a lot of episodes in the past on seafood, so that's one of the most powerful connections we have to the ocean. Yes, we look at the ocean, we might go on a vacation, we might go swimming into the ocean, but like like for many of us in Canada, like the most direct way we can influence the health of the ocean is through the seafood we buy and the choices we make that can be oftentimes, or the choices we don't make to maybe say, I don't want this particular type of seafood because I know that it causes damage to the ocean. And that goes the same for all types of food. So, we don't go around saying, don't do this or don't do that when it comes to food purchasing decisions, or you have to fit into this type of category of diet or whatever. We just try and inform people, that how much it matters or how connected we are through those daily actions. And then even with our episodes we do about plastics, like so much of the single-use disposable plastic we create is from the food we're buying and things we're getting, in our daily lives. So yeah, it does make a difference, when we choose to use reusable containers for our drinks and our food. It's great to see more bans and restrictions coming on certain types of plastic, and I think it's going to be a big adjustment and learning curve in terms of reducing plastic waste, single-use plastic waste. We go into a lot of that in our episode, The Great Plastic Lakes. But yeah, I would say like it just thinking about food and diet and the purchases you make, whether it's through plastic you create, and the seafood you buy, or just the decisions you make at the grocery store and restaurant, those things are probably one of the most powerful decisions you make on a daily basis when it comes to the health of water, our oceans, and the environment.
Well, and even I think it's the Save Our Soils episode, but you talk about even the methane and purchases of the way that beef is cared for. It's not the there was the line, it's not the cow, it's the how. Talking about
Yeah.
how these how cows are cared for and whatnot. But again, talking about the way that we interact with our food purchases and whatnot, and how we care for them before they get there,
Mhm.
is fascinating. It really is. Um, um, I forgive my naivety. I just wanted to ask you about the importance of carbon because I feel like carbon comes up a lot in this film. We talk about the soils retaining it and whatnot. But I'll be honest, I just don't know a lot about our relationship to carbon. What is it about that that needed to be emphasized so heavily in this particular series?
Um, well, there's a lot of different ways that our relationship with carbon. Well, I mean, first of all, we're mostly made up of a lot of us is
Right.
carbon and water. Our bodies can be 60 to 70% water, and then a lot of the non-water stuff is carbon. So, and then there's that personal relationship with carbon, and then there's a story of fossil fuels. So the carbon that we're digging up that is not part of the carbon cycle, and we're putting it into the carbon cycle, or at least it's going from a form where it was stored underground for a long, long time and basically kind of inert, or not going anywhere, not part of the not being put into the atmosphere. And there's that whole story, and then there's the actual carbon cycle in terms of carbon moving from the atmosphere, getting sequestered into the ocean, or getting sequestered in peatlands and soils, and the powerful role of soils in storing carbon. We often think of
Yeah.
a forest, like planting a tree, as this powerful way to store carbon, but when in reality it's the soil that holds more of the carbon, than the trees above it. And that's sort of one of the big stories of both our episodes, Save Our Soils, and then The Breathing Lands, which is a story of peatlands, which is kind of a story of, it's a story about wetlands, but also about soils as well. um, so I think one of the oh yeah, there's a theme of this season when it comes to carbon. It's definitely the story of the role of water and soils working together to store carbon, and that delicate balance that we've really messed up all around the world through the conversion of natural ecosystems into farmland. And then once it's farmland, the farming, the agricultural practices that can cause more carbon to be released from the soil and actually make it harder for that soil to reabsorb carbon back into it. And yeah, so that is a big theme of it. And I think hopefully that's something that's going to really surprise people and fascinate people, is this incredible relationship between the health of our soils and the health of the atmosphere and the health of the carbon cycle, and really the whole planet.
Yeah, that was something that I'd never considered. Just and was total. Thank you for answering that so openly because I just I, as a, I don't in general understand that relationship as well as I should or want to. I know, Alex. I know we're running out of time, but there's some conversations in this series too about government policies and the sorts of things we should be encouraging our government to take action for. But it's such a daunting process because, like you said, there's so many different ways that we're polluting our waters and that we're dealing with the soil. What sorts of things should we be challenging uh, the powers that be with at this time?
Well, there's
Sure,
Certainly
there's
a lot.
countless one. Yeah.
Uh, I'll try and tackle it, without going on forever. But for our episode, the breathing lands, I would say it's something that needs to be considered is how much carbon gets released when we dig up peatlands. There's not really a really strong understanding yet of how much. We know it's a lot, but how much carbon is getting released when you even not only build a mine, say up in peatlands in the north, but even just like doing testing, like with the drill holes when they're just trying to figure out what the mineral find is under there. There's no accounting process for that. So getting better at holding, whether it's a mining company or the oil and gas industry, having them be more accountable for the carbon that they release into the atmosphere is a big one. But also just, uh, without getting too into like pointing fingers, it's just more about we got to protect more of the planet. That's a big theme of the breathing lands. Like, Canada is committed to protecting 25%, by 2025, 25% of our lands and waters, by 2025, and 30 by 30. And then there's a movement to go 50 by 50, because a lot of the leading, scientists from many different fields, but who work in like conservation, ecology, biology, are saying that, to avoid a lot of the worst, climate change scenarios and biodiversity loss scenarios, it's often said we're living in the midst of a sixth mass extinction based on the current extinction rate. We need to protect 50% of the planet. 50% has to basically be wild. We need to keep it wild for us to live in harmony with nature. So that's a big theme of the breathing lands, is just we've got to protect more areas. And of course, you're going to have to make decisions on which areas you protect. And it just seems that peatlands are no brainer because they store 5 times as much carbon as the equivalent area in the Amazon rainforest. So if we're going to say, hey, we should protect the Amazon for the benefit of the climate, actually, there's a better argument to be made to protect peatlands even more than the Amazon if we're just strictly talking about carbon. Of course, an Amazonian rainforest is going to have a lot more biodiversity, a lot more different types of species. But from a carbon standpoint, that's really important. When it comes to plastics, I think we need to start eliminating the most harmful types of single-use plastics. I think that only government is able to do that. I think we're inundated with all sorts of single-use plastics in our daily lives that are not necessary. And yeah, it's good to see some of these bans come into place. Of course, there's going to be growing pains with any type of thing where government's trying to regulate consumer items like that, and packaging and all these things. But I think government working together with industry, there's a lot of potential there. So there's a lot to be done, a lot being done, but a lot more that can be done. When it comes to soils, I think it's just more support for government can do more to support farmers as they transition to more sustainable agricultural techniques. Again, that can help store carbon through farming. So without going into all the different ways that farmers, you got to watch the episode. But yeah, no, there's a lot governments can be doing to support farmers, because to change their techniques, say to go to a no-till system for growing corn, that's a big investment for a farmer that they're probably not going to make without some support. And I think that there's a lot of things farmers can do for the benefit of biodiversity, for the benefit of the climate, for the benefit of growing healthy food, that they deserve support from government to transition to some of these more sustainable techniques. Um, yeah, and then when it comes to, I guess, the world's oldest water, that episode, that was a bit more of a science-focused episode, but really it's a celebration of groundwater. And yeah, I think governments can do a lot to protect our groundwater resources, um, and do more to study how much groundwater we have. Again, it's kind of like the peatlands and knowing how much carbon's up there. For groundwater, we need to get a much better sense of how much groundwater do we have, how fast is it being depleted, which big sources of groundwater are vulnerable to pollution. And then we do our big episode on when it comes to chemicals and chemical regulation. Our is our episode, the Forever Chemicals. That's about PFAS, perfluoroalkyl substances, which is a group of thousands and thousands of chemicals that we use in our daily lives. We don't know it, but whether it's nonstick pans, any type of waterproof clothing, makeup, cosmetics, all this, almost all of it has PFAS in it. And again, you kind of have to watch the episode to learn what that's about. But that's going to take a lot of um, uh, government leadership to really start actually regulating that as a class of chemicals. Health Canada has already announced plans to do that. Instead of trying to regulate the thousands upon thousands of chemicals that fall under PFAS individually, there needs to be a regulating them as a class. So anything is PFAS, it should be listed as toxic, and we need to get PFAS out of as many products as possible. They should really only be used for essential items, like industrial applications. I don't think we need as much PFAS in our daily lives, in our nonstick cookware. Definitely shouldn't be on kids' clothing or cosmetics. Things that we're applying directly to our skin and providing this direct pathway. Not only into our own bodies, but as we explained in the episode, how it's building up in our water and how it never goes away, and the problems associated with that. So that's a big one for government to take leadership on, the forever chemicals.
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. Honestly, Alex, the series is great, and I really do appreciate the time to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to chat.
Absolutely. And it's available on TVO, but when does it launch?
Well, you can watch all the episodes on the TVO Docs YouTube page already. You can watch the full season, and right now it's playing. If you want to watch it on TVO, the channel, it's playing Thursdays at 9 p.m. and Sundays at 7 p.m. for the next 5 more weeks. The first episode came out last week, but for a lot of people watching it on YouTube or through our website, thewaterbrothers.ca, that's easier for a lot of people these days.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day.
All right, take care.
Thanks.